Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with an Obsidian news update. Now before I get into anything in today's video, I want to preface all of it by just saying take this new information with a grain of salt. I care a lot about my credibility and my reputation, but as someone who covers a lot of Obsidian historically, I felt this was important information to share, especially since a lot of my original video that I made about this Epic Game Store exclusivity was pointing the finger at Obsidian, even though I offered logical reasoning behind the entire situation and why a business would do it. Anyway, this time I caught wind from a source, which I'm usually not a sources said kind of guy, because normally when someone emails me something, it's normally just to get into contact with me and nothing more than that, or someone faking it and ending up not being anything. But this time evidence did support what someone had told me. So first I want to explain the sequence of events of how this information seemed more plausible, and then share what new information I grabbed from said source. So I made my video, as most of you know, 2 days ago about the exclusivity of the Epic Game Store for the Outer Worlds. I shared my thoughts on it, like I said, the logical reasoning, the business decision behind it, even though it does suck. I get why a small company like Obsidian would have done it. Well, now new information has surfaced that it may not have been Obsidian who made the decision at all, but possibly Take-Two/Private Division. So what happened was, after I made my video, I'd received an email saying Obsidian didn't want this deal and pretty much they were totally against it, and if I wanted to know more, contact this person, which once again, there was nothing at all out there supporting those claims, so I decided to ignore it, quite honestly. But then afterwards, a report came from Alt-Care, I apologize if I mispronounced your site, but they also said Obsidian was apparently unaware of the Outer Worlds exclusivity, and they had physical evidence supporting that. They had actually highlighted that Obsidian was adding Steam achievements 4 hours prior to the announcement of the Outer Worlds going to the Epic Game Store exclusively, which wouldn't make sense for a developer to do if they actually knew it wouldn't be for another year that they were going to Steam. Because we can even see in the changelog, after they had added these achievements, they then changed the store release date to 2020. All the more peculiar though, which does sort of devalue this and why I say take it with a grain of salt, but once again it is important to discuss, is that Obsidian does continue to add achievements to Steam despite the fact that it's coming out in 2020, which I don't really quite understand why they do that. Pretty much what I was told after the fact when I saw this information and put 2 and 2 together, that Obsidian didn't want this deal according to this email, and now we're seeing evidence suggesting that they didn't even know about the deal happening, then they probably didn't want it actually happening if they were just planning on releasing on Steam, because it didn't really add up to what their PR was building up to. So when I contacted the person afterwards, I was like, hey, it seems like the information you shared was actually correct. Is there anything else you want to say? And it didn't offer too much additional information, but pretty much it said that as far as Obsidian goes, they're quite upset with the move because they built so much trust with the community and we were waiting for a release, but now it's kind of like a spit in the face. Like I said, that's just a little additional source info and may hint at the idea that Obsidian actually didn't want this deal at all, which makes complete sense, especially because some folks were actually suggesting this, and this makes even more sense, and I'm sad I didn't think about it in my original video. But if Obsidian wanted more money for the Outer Worlds, why wouldn't they have gone to the Windows Store exclusively and Microsoft could have paid them extra because they're already part of the Microsoft family? I mean, that seems entirely possible. But what I think will offer people more of a perspective is actually someone who formerly worked at Obsidian, sharing publicly information about their experience with the CEO of Obsidian and whether or not it was Obsidian making this decision or Take-Two/Private Division. That person is none other than the beloved Chris Avallone. So he puts out a tweet saying, it's not Epic's fault. Which should you blame? The one who offers cash or the one who accepts it, when talking about Obsidian not going to Steam. Now Legacy Killer HD, which some of you may be familiar with him, said, Chris, don't you believe that this decision was made by Take-Two and Private Division, not Obsidian, who's now owned by Microsoft? Just not making a lot of sense in my opinion. Chris responds and says, nope, based on my experience with Obsidian's CEO, the devs are always the last to know, and the last to know what the CEO decided, sometimes far in advance, even while the devs in the trenches were working hard on the game they believe in. So based off Chris's experience here, he's pretty much saying that this could have been a decision made many months ago before anything had even gone down with the Outer Worlds, and that the Obsidian CEO had pretty much hidden it from the company. And if I'm honest, I'm more willing to take Chris's word as someone who had actively worked with Obsidian for many years. He had helped found the company, and on top of that, there was that whole issue which got swept under the rug way too quickly with Obsidian, where they had pretty much forced Chris Avellone out of the company and almost to never write on games again. I know people love Obsidian, and just like any other company, they've made their mistakes, but that was one that I was surprised the internet didn't make a lot more noise about. But point being here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're getting a lot of different opinions here. We're hearing sources saying, yes, they did not want this deal at all. We're also hearing someone who formerly worked at Obsidian saying, yeah, they probably actually knowingly made this deal. My interpretation of all this information that I'm getting tossed my way is pretty much that the Obsidian CEO likely knew about this decision. I can't imagine that they pulled the wool over their eyes and Take-Two and Private Division just went double birdie to them and said, yep, we're going ahead and actually making this exclusive and you have no freaking say in it. I think that at least the higher ups in Obsidian were aware of this deal. The developers, like Chris said, were working hard in the trenches, making the proper changes to the game, following the path, adding Steam achievements in. Makes sense because they didn't know anything. Then word spread throughout the rest of the company that, hey, this is a decision we're making with the game. And I gotta say, man, I get the business decision. Like I said in my original video about this, I get the extra money, I get the lure of it, but it also soils what had such positive press around a product. Like, there was glowing, audible excitement around the Outer Worlds, and I think people are still excited, but there's more people who are vocally like, yep, passing, yep, skipping. And that seems very against what Obsidian was really ramping up to. And yes, while the money may be nice, isn't there a bit of a white elephant in the room when the developers are sitting there realizing that their dream project, Obsidian, before announcing this game, had referred to Outer Worlds on many occasions as a dream project, pretty much just got soiled by corporate hands who just wanted a little extra money? It's just really shitty to see it all unfold. So my interpretation at the end of the day is pretty much higher ups at Obsidian got together with Private Division, Take-Two. They made a financial business decision here. It affected the devs who clearly didn't want people to not access their games because exclusivity hurts the amount of people who can reach out to a product. I understand there's a lot of confused people too who always ask, why is this Epic Game Store thing a big deal? You can look up the number of charts out there on the Epic Game Store versus Steam, where yes, Steam needs to improve, Steam needs to rebound, we want Steam to rebound, but also the Epic Game Store has so many blatant, glaring flaws that it's quite obvious why it shouldn't be supported at this point in time. Now, Epic's actually gone out and said that they're not going to be buying out as many games, so of course the most anticipated game of 2019, the one of course I'm fucking excited for, actually decides to be one of the games they buy out. God forbid a game I'm looking forward to, yes, I'm gonna victimize myself, actually doesn't get targeted by some type of controversy. Next will be the Dragon Ball RPG. Something stupid will happen with that. It'll be like a 6 out of 10 or something. Quote that, because watch, it'll happen. What I think will solve all of this is if Obsidian did what 4A Games did and put out a public statement about it, but I wonder if they even can to an extent, because they saw sort of what happened with Metro and when the devs responded about the Epic Game Store exclusivity and pretty much threatened fans that they'd never put game on PC ever again, which is simply ridiculous and I think got completely blown out of proportion. Obviously that guy wouldn't have made a call on something like that, but point being is that I think Obsidian needs to submit a statement out there. I think just dropping this news and trying to bury your head in the sand is not the way to go about it, especially when there are now conflicting reports coming everywhere. And like I said, I just wanted to share this information I got for you guys because while I couldn't confirm it entirely, the source I mean, it did seem to add up with what other evidence had surfaced on the internet, but then Chris, in his opinion, does contradict said source. So like I said, that's why I wanted you to take all this with a grain of salt, because I think it's quite important that we develop our own opinion, stay informed, and wait for official word, because like I said, I couldn't firm it up sadly, but it's still something I felt quite obliged to share with all of you because I found it very important to the discussion. And I think if anything, I showed mostly evidence and mostly logical stuff we could discuss and a little bit focused on the source. Also, I want to put it out there, it seemed like the source didn't really want to stay entirely anonymous, because when I asked them, they were like, yeah, we've done leaks before, it's not a big deal, and they go by a YouTube channel name of Triple S League. They actually did leaks for Borderlands last year, which ended up being accurate based off stuff happening now. On top of that, they also did some Cyberpunk leaks, which have been a little hit or miss for folks, so like I said, take it with a grain of salt, but still I wanted to make sure I properly cite my source and let you all know where the information had actually come from. And some may be wondering, Matty, why are you putting this information out here if I've got to take it with a grain of salt? I totally 130,000% understand that perspective, and why I am emphasizing taking it with a grain of salt is mostly because I'm so deeply embedded in this community, so I feel obliged to share information when I do catch wind of it, but more so it's because this source really isn't at the core of the discussion. It's more so comparing and contrasting what we heard from a said source versus what's actually physically out there and does have hard evidence. And I felt it added to the discussion a little bit more, but I feel like there's a sense of responsibility on the viewer's end to make sure they properly hear me emphasize multiple times throughout the video, like, hey, grain of salt, grain of salt, grain of salt. Don't run away like it's fact, because if you say it once in the video and then you run away and you talk about everything that happened, sometimes it can get lost in the discussion. So that's why I've just really emphasized it. Also, I've never done this before, so I just want to make sure I'm doing it right and just telling people like, hey, this isn't 100% confirmed what I was told, so just keep that in mind before you share it with anybody. So I'd love to hear from all of you in the comments down below. Do fire away, ladies and gentlemen. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that, as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.